9.6, same thing. But this time, they ask you for all funds and the GCA GLTL entries. So all the fund and non-fund entries come into play. Right? So what you were asking about in the last one, in the first one, right, is coming into play now. So you're seeing more of the holistic transaction. How does it affect both places? So, number one, says the township authorized a bond issue of $5 million par to finance construction of a fountain in the town square. The bonds were issued for $5,120,000. Bond issue costs of $30,000 were incurred and paid. The premium less bond issue costs was transferred to the fund from which the debt is to be serviced. Okay? That's a lot of stuff. So, first, we issued some bonds, right? We issued them for $5,120,000, right? Of that $5,120,000, we actually saw cash of $5,090,000. Why? Because there was $30,000 that got paid in bond issue costs. Yes? So this is in the capital projects fund. Okay? Right, that's where the bond issue is going to happen. Okay? Then we have other financing. We had a bond premium, and we have the bonds themselves. Okay, so there's our $5.12 million. Then it says that we transferred the remaining, right? The premium. I'm sorry. The difference between the premium and the issue cost. We transferred that, that's the money left over, right, over and above the liability, to the fund that's going to service the debt, which is probably called a debt service fund. So, we have other financing sources in the capital projects fund that gets debited, cash that gets credited because that cash moves to the debt service fund. So you have the exact opposite entry under the debt service fund. And then under the long-term liabilities, right, the non-fund, you have a net position change of $5.12 million. You have bonds payable of $5 million and premium on bonds of $120,000. Make sense? Questions? Number one. So, again, you have multiple steps, right? Because you're seeing all the different funds and the non-fund. Questions? Number two. Number two is a little easier. The township entered into a contract for construction of the fountain at an estimated cost of $4.85 million. Your budget entry comes back into play, right? Because you're dealing with the fund, right? We didn't do a budget entry on exercise 9.4 because we were just looking at the non-fund. Now we're recording the budget entry. Does that make sense? You've done all these pieces before, you're just bringing them together. Okay? Number three. The town received and paid a $4.89 million bill for the construction upon completion of and approval of the fountain. So, we reverse our budget entry in the capital projects fund. Then in the general ledger of the capital projects fund, we record the expenditure and the cash. Right? Then in our non-fund, we record the asset, and the increase in net position. Questions? Does it make sense?
What was the fund right above the capital asset?
This piece? This is the actual expenditure. So you have the budget, right? This is some of the stuff we did last week. When that number two, we set up the budget.
Okay.
Right? Number three, we actually are spending the money. So we reverse the budget, right? Because now it's zero. Yes? And then we record the actual transaction. So you have a budget entry here and a general ledger entry here. Remember the difference between the budget piece and the actual piece. Then down below that, so that's in the capital project fund. That's in the fund. Then in the non-fund, we record the asset at cost, right? You always record an asset at cost, whether you're doing non-profit or regular, whatever regular. Okay? Questions? Okay? Last one, number 4. The unused bond proceeds were set aside for debt service on the bonds. Accordingly, those resources were paid to the appropriate fund. So, leftover money in the capital projects fund, we're transferring it to the debt service fund. Okay? So it's going to be a transfer out of the capital projects fund, a use, other financing uses, right, because they're using the money. It'll be other financing sources to the debt service fund. Same amount, just paying one fund to the next. Questions?
No, but there's a typo on that last line there.
To record transfer or of or on. Better? Yes, sir.
In our homework, if we don't have the descriptions, is that a problem?
These?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't have those last week.
Some are self-explanatory.
I mean, I generally haven't. I wouldn't put them in unless you said to do it.
Yeah.
From the
Yeah, I would want you to do it. Yeah, I want you to do it. For when you're even if you're doing entries into a computer system, generally you're going to put some description.
Minus the leftover from the 4.89.
Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Because I had all those stuff, but this was just. I don't know what the hell to do for that.
Okay.